Hello and welcome to the 42's Rugby Show, the Grand Slam winning edition. What a weekend it was for Irish sport, for Irish rugby. Joe Schmidt's side not only augmented a third Six Nations title in 5 years with a Grand Slam, but they did so in some style. Murray Kinsella, you were over in London. How was your Grand Slam winning weekend?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad actually. I feel kind of lucky to have been there. Obviously an incredibly composed performance. I think they saved best to last, and they're on this remarkable run now, and it seems like nothing can stop them. They seem so confident, even at half-time in a 21-5 lead, you know, incredibly strong position. And Joe Schmidt even himself looked to be enjoying it in the stands. So really it kind of summed up exactly where Ireland are. 12 wins in a row, and young guys coming through, experienced heads playing really well, and it's hard not to think that the future is going to be even brighter than this. Yeah,
and there's a lot of analysis being over the last couple of days of people as the dust has been kind of settling on that performance in the campaign. We're going to take a slightly different approach. We're going to kind of take a closer look at the individual contributions throughout the campaign for Ireland. And as we know, huge contributions across the board, and we were just looking before we came on air at the whole squad that Joe used, and you go down through nearly every player and nearly there's a big contribution in there from everyone.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to pick out a guy who hasn't had a good championship really, and that includes all the guys who came off the bench. Possibly in the first couple of games he wasn't happy with the last quarter. Joe wasn't happy with that, but realistically everyone's made a huge contribution. There's guys who haven't played that are really unlucky not to have played, so I think guys like that will be looking forward to that tour in Australia. But yeah, some unbelievably strong individual performances. Like, if you were picking a 15, you could argue we pick 15 players for the team of the championship from the Irish squad. It was that strong, and even the backup guys. So yeah, I think it's interesting just to break down exactly what guys contributed, like, I mean, in terms of fitting into the Joe Schmidt system, because that's what it's all about. Like, it's not about being the best in your position in the competition. It's about doing exactly what you need to within his tactical plan, and I think a lot of guys did that really well. So yeah, really strong squad performance.
Yeah. Okay, if we start at the back three, a fairly constant back three throughout the tournament for Ireland, but again, some standout performances. If we look, maybe we start with Rob Kearney. Again, an outstanding performance across the board. Signed a new IRFU contract this morning, so great news for him and for Irish rugby. Do you want to pick out a couple of moments that he kind of excelled in?
Yeah, I mean, well, he's always a guy who kind of divides opinion. It'll be interesting. I'd love to hear from people what they thought of his performance in the championship. Certainly, just looking on my own Facebook page today, a lot of people are saying maybe my opinion has been revised, because I've seen how good Rob Kearney can be when he's fully fit, and that's a big thing for him. You saw him grow throughout the championship. And even against England, you know, he beat 9 defenders in that game, which is an unbelievable amount. And it saw him kind of hitting his peak. Like, if we look at his stats across the course of the championship, there you go, 18 defenders beaten, which kind of, you know, there's that reputation.
That's the most in the championship of any player.
Exactly, he has that reputation as a guy who's not going to beat defenders, and yet there's a clean stat for him. Tackles made, tackles missed. There are 6 missed tackles, and he probably gets a bit of flack around that. I think people question his one-on-one tackling, but I think if you look at that England game, some of the tackles he made on the edge were really important at key moments in the game, and it's such a difficult place to defend. Like, you're so exposed, aren't you? And defenders beaten, he had a lot of defenders beaten. I think that's a carry stat there. So he carried a lot of ball into contact 55 times, and then obviously the aerial game is a real strength for him. Kind of 20 catches from kicks and restarts, as well as cleaning up a lot of loose ball around the pitch. So I think there is his strength, that positional play. I think we're actually going to look at an example here from the England game, you know, because they play this 13-2 defensive system, Ireland, where they have 13 guys in the front line, and you can actually see Conor Murray. We're going to highlight him here in the analysis. He's just there. He's coming back from the defensive line, because England have chipped in over the top through George Ford. So Kearney has to come all the way up from the backfield, but he does it really well. He reads the game really intelligently, intuitively, and he gets there. And we're not going to play the clip here, but it's just an example. He gets up really strongly in the air. It's actually a kind of momentum boosting moment for Ireland, even late in the game when they've got it sewn up. So they're the things he really excels at. I don't know, what did you think of his performance overall? Just obviously in that clip you're showing there, I think Joe, before the England game, was asked in the pre-match press conference about Rob and how he's performed throughout the tournament, and one of the things he said was, you know, in the Scotland game at the Aviva, you showed he just marshals the backfield so expertly, but his pace across the backfield, and he reads it, as you say there, so intelligently, so he's always in a good position to cover whether they kick it in behind. And I think one of the interesting contributions for me was that Scotland game in the build up to Conor Murray's try, and that was the kind of the game clinching try in the second half, where Johnny Sexton you know, tried another up and under which had worked in the first half, but he didn't get that one right, and Kearney kind of gets up above Stuart Hogg when he had no right to win it, and kind of salvage possession. Ireland recycle, then they go out and they win a penalty, and eventually Murray gets over. But
as you say, just so intelligent, and he really has proved a lot of people wrong, I think, in this campaign.
Yeah, like a big game player, and there's moments that you can't kind of quantify in stats. Like his communication is really strong, and certainly speaking to Jacob Stockdale, he said he's helped me so much on the pitch. Like, he's marshalling a lot in the backfield, as you mentioned. He's got that strength to his game. So yeah, he's a big game player as well. Like, on the big occasions he's delivered. You think back to that All Blacks match when Joe Schmidt went to him and said, listen, I need a big game from you. So he's been under pressure constantly for the last few years, and he's constantly stepped up. What's really interesting now going forward is, like, Jordan Larmour's on the scene. He looks like 15 maybe his best position, and how does Carney continue to react to that pressure? But so far, really well he's reacted.
Final word on Carney, do you think at 31, and kind of following on from this morning's announcement that he signed a new contract through to the World Cup, do people really start to now appreciate his worth in the team?
I think
there always going to be the critics?
Look, there's always going to be critics. Like, people always want, I mean, he does beat defenders, but people probably want a guy who creates these unbelievable line breaks and searing tries from kick return. Maybe he's not quite that guy, and there are aspects of his game. Like, we looked on the Rugby Show, the Scotland game, there was a couple of times he could have passed for really good opportunities on the wide edge. A couple of times maybe he bid in when opposition teams scored out wide, so there's a bit of a trust with that last defender as well, but they're minor things to pick up, and I think overall he's really vindicated the selection.
And other players had an excellent tournament. Keith Earls, unfortunately, that injury that he picked up towards the end of the game at Twickenham looks to be quite serious, but overall a hugely successful tournament, I suppose, for him on an individual level. Yeah,
incredibly popular guy, and I think everyone was pleased for him, and seeing him with his daughters on the pitch afterwards was a really nice moment. But really effective around the pitch. He only scored one try, and there was someone actually trying to say to me yesterday, drop this guy, he only scored one try in the championship, which is crazy stuff. He could have been the player of the championship. And he contributes so much defensively as well as attacking. Like, if we look at his stats, there was 26 made, 4 missed, and so many of them were absolutely key moments. We'll look at an example in a second, but he beat 11 defenders, 6 offloads, so he maybe didn't get those tries, but he's creating chances. And then one stat I wanted to highlight was the loose ball collection. So, like, ball that falls on the ground, gets scrappy, you know. Leinster, for example, call it scraps, as Stephen Ferris told us, and he's the guy who's falling on that ball so often. He's brave, he's aggressive, he's almost like an open side, kind of like his father a little bit, but that competitiveness on top of, for me, what is a lot of X factor in attack, just makes him the player he is. What did you think of his performance?
I think you mentioned competitiveness there. I think that hunt down, you know, Ireland had game 1 against Italy, and for many people that was kind of the moment of the championship, and I think we were just talking before air, and it just kind of sums up Ireland's attitude, that never say die, working right until the 80th minute on Bellini to make sure that Italy didn't get across for that bonus point try. Mightn't be on the level of, say, a Johnny Sexton drop goal in Paris in terms of championship defining moments, but certainly one that kind of underlined Ireland's willingness to work and get back and work for the 80 minutes. And then the tap tackle, of course, at Twickenham on Saturday, which you highlighted in a piece since. And then the crossfield kick, of course, in Paris in the lead up to Johnny's drop goal. So big moments, and, like, you know, as you say, maybe only one try throughout the tournament for Keith Earls, but huge contributions all across the board. We
want to look at that Italy tackle again, because, as you say, it just summed up so much about the mindset of Ireland. You know, you're in the last minute, Italy get an interception through Bellini, and they're going away up the right touchline there. Like, Earls doesn't actually have to make that run. You know, he was back in midfield. He starts all the way back. And if he doesn't make it, no one's going to really notice. Well, Joe Schmidt is probably going to notice, actually, and say, why didn't you get back there? You have the pace. But it's unbelievable work rate. And no matter how organised you are, no matter how good your tactics are, like, that has to be there all the time. And I think you saw when he did it, the camera kind of shot to Johnny Sexton and Conor Murray on the bench. They stood up, they applauded. Like, that said a lot about what this team is about. And for me, it said a lot about what Earls is about as well.
Sure. Jacob Stockdale, what more can we say about him other than his try stats? But again, real coming of age, I suppose, if that's the right kind of phrase to use about him, because, you know, we saw in November what he can do on the international stage, and he really just went to another level. Again, one of these young players who kind of epitomises this new generation in the Irish squad, fearlessness. And I think, just looking at his stats, we're going to look at now, just again, huge contributions across the board, but those try scoring stats really stand out.
I mean, he's a record breaker, and I asked him after the game, I said, how many do you think you can score for Ireland? And he said flip, first of all, it's his favourite little word, and he said the sky's the limit. So, like, he's got confidence, he's just exuberant, enthusiastic, he's loving it, and he's not awed by it. And I think, like, the stats are really impressive. Defenders beating 11, clean breaks 10. He had tries from intercepts as well. There are a couple of missed tackles there. I think technically he's got a bit of work to do on just getting his body height when he goes into contact. but he's showing he can learn so quickly. Those intercepts are a clear example, and they also underline his mindset. I spoke to Kieran Campbell up in the Ulster Academy, and he said one of the strengths of Jacob Stockdale is he doesn't get bogged down after a mistake. He doesn't let the pressure sit on top of him. He's a bit laid back, but that's what works for him. So, after the France game, we were all talking, is this guy going to be dropped? Joe Schmidt backs him. He understands that he's got the character to rebound from those mistakes. And yes, he made more defensive mistakes, but he also showed with those interceptions that he's not afraid to go and take those risks. And he got the payback. And I think his defensive performances certainly did improve as the competition went on. But that try scoring, like that example against England, he's brought so much to this team. Like chip and chase around the outside over Mike Brown, and then he gets onto the ball, gets another little nudge with his left leg, and we just want to highlight, he's got two English tacklers here dragging him. I think he can go down there and claim a penalty try probably, but he just wants that
just
try.
Shows the ambition, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. All he's thinking about is, I can score here. He can see the extended dead ball line, thanks for that, England. And he just wants to get that touchdown, so he stays on his feet. It also shows his athletic ability, and we should definitely touch on that, because he is a big boy. He's strong, he's quick, his footwork is excellent, and that makes a huge difference. So I think there's more to come from him. I think Ireland can turn him into an attacking weapon in the air as well. And geez, it's just frightening to think how many tries he can score if he stays fit. He can beat Brian O'Driscoll's record, I think.
One of these guys is just so hungry to play rugby. I think he's back at Ulster already, speaking today that he wants to be involved in their game against the Blues in the Pro 14 on Saturday. So after a long campaign with Ireland, just shows you how hungry he is to get back out there and score tries.
You got to manage that, I guess. And I suppose, to touch on the rest of the back three, it is important that Ireland continue to get really good, strong options for that depth as well. He may pick up an injury at some stage. He's only 21. Everyone has to deal with that at some stage. So, looking at the other guys who are involved, Jordan Larmour obviously is hugely exciting in that regard. He came on at 13. I don't know what you thought of his performance at 13. It was obviously a different challenge for him. Yeah,
he had obviously played a bit there in school, and I know Joe said afterwards that he hadn't trained at all in Ireland camp at 13, so that was a huge challenge. But it also just shows you the faith that Joe has in him to throw him on. It would have been easy to bring Joey Carberry on and move Keith Earls in, and it just shows you the faith that Joe has in him. I think defensively he was, there was a few maybe slight errors or areas that he could have improved on, but overall, that darting break towards the line, I know Joe picked him up on it, that he could have offloaded outside to Keith Earls, and he would have been over. But just hugely exciting, and for a guy to come on for his third cap at Twickenham and to perform that well and just kind of fit in and slot in alongside Gary Ringrose was hugely impressive.
He probably did get tight for those last two tries, but I mean, as you say, he hadn't trained there. And there was also some really powerful tackling from him. He's a small guy.
He hits the ruck hard. He was straight on.
I think going through his ruck stats across his competition, he hasn't had many minutes, but every time he's had to hit a ruck, it's been really impressive. So he does those little technical details as well as the footwork and the searing pace. And in one way, he should have passed there, but he's also backing himself. He's a guy who wants to score tries as well. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits exactly for Ireland. He's played a couple of positions now, wing, fullback. I don't know if centre really is his future, but he's got a passing game as well. We saw one lovely pass down the left hand side where it was Carberry, Larmour and Stockdale. Really exciting for the future. They combined down the left. So I think it was a positive start for him. I thought the kind of flack he got after the Italy game was a little bit strong. That first try, obviously he got stepped, but that can happen to any player. The second try that people were kind of flagging for, I didn't think was his fault at all. And he had that unbelievable line break where he absolutely danced around two props in the space of a phone box. So he's a really exciting talent, and how he develops is going to be really interesting.
I suppose final word on him just shows you the mental strength, I suppose, that involved for a debut against Italy, then a bit of flack afterwards because he'd been built up in the hype, and then to come back in against Scotland and justify a selection again, and then be on the bench against England just shows you huge mental strength, and really exciting, as you say. Moving on, I suppose, to the centres, a few players involved in midfield for Ireland during the course of the campaign. If we start with Bundy, though, he was the one constant. Again, hugely impressive showing in his first Six Nations campaign. Trojan work off the ball, as the stats will show here.
Really impressive stats. He's like the glue in midfield. As you say, so many changing partners, but he was always reliable, consistent. Tackles really strongly, 40 and only 4 missed, and 57 carries, really powerful direct presence, as well as these second last two stats kind of highlight how he grew into the campaign. Against Scotland, he has 2 passes that give line breaks, so really important for a centre to have that little creative touch as well. And then against England, we know we went through off that furlong pass, and he provided the scoring pass inside standard, did really well in behind the line. I think Joe Schmidt would have been really impressed with that. Like, he is an experienced guy, he's 27. Having said that, it is still his Six Nations kind of debut campaign, and it's a lot of pressure, but for me he stood up really impressively. Just a lot of little details as well.
He looks at home in that Irish midfield as well now.
Yeah, I think that's him kind of settled in for good in that regard. He's got a big personality, and I think his communication actually came across really well on the ref mic a couple of times as well. Probably not something he's famous for as well, but really impressive. Yeah. I
suppose if we look at Gary Ringrose, because he was the centre alongside Bundy that finished the tournament, two hugely impressive performances, having come off barely any minutes this season. Again, just magical footwork is one of the things that you want to look at, but defensively so strong, managing that outside channel really, really strongly. Yeah,
like 22 tackles, and that 13 channel was a bit of an issue for Ireland. Not because of the personnel that were in there, but just in terms of how they worked collectively. 22 tackles, 4 miss. But he was really intelligent how when he softened up, when he went hard off the line with line speed, he combined the two of them really well, and he beat 6 defenders. His footwork is a massive plus for Ireland, because in the first game against France, obviously conditions were tough, so being creative is difficult, but they did look a little bit too reliant on Johnny Sexton, I felt, and that has been maybe an issue in the past. With Ringrose in the team, his footwork, and also he's shown a little bit of an ability to pass for that Jacob Stockdale's second try against the Scots, but his footwork adds something different. And the example I looked at was the Stockdale try against England, and just to carry directly before it, Ringrose gets on the ball. We see him here just getting on the ball for Ireland, and he's going to make just a little darting break to the inside. He gets just inside Johnny May's left shoulder and outside Dylan Hartley. That ties in the two of them to the one tackle, just because he's such a threat. And then on the next phase, you're going to see that Wigglesworth he's going to get isolated just over here. So Ringrose integrity involved in that, and just shows the benefit of having that footwork. Even if you look at Conor Murray's try, you mentioned that earlier on, go back, it comes from a 5 metre line out, but go back to the penalty that won that opportunity, and it was Ringrose's footwork inside Hugh Jones, stresses the Scottish defence, and then they concede a penalty. So I think we all forgot how good he was. He was nearly a line, so it's exciting. He's only 23 as well.
Just a quick word, I suppose, for Robbie Henshaw and Chris Farrell. We know what Robbie Henshaw can do, but Chris Farrell stepping up to the mark. When Henshaw was sidelined, and he really impressive performance in that game. So unfortunate then to miss out the rest of the campaign through injury, but again, Schmidt has spoken a lot about on this campaign about building resources, and centre looks particularly strong now.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, who would you pick? Who would be your first choice if they're all fit? Who would you pick? Who would be the two? It's a tough choice.
It is, yeah. You nearly have to have Ringrose in there. He just looks a class apart, doesn't he? And Bundy and Robbie Henshaw. There's so many options. It is very difficult to pick.
Yeah, if I had to pick, if they're all four fit, I think for me Henshaw and Ringrose probably the best balance. But in a different game, Bundy and Aki and Chris Farrell might be the better options, because against Wales that game suited them so well. Get a really strong gain line, be unbelievably physically, unbelievably direct. Or Henshaw and Aki have played together in Connacht as well. So Schmidt suddenly has all these options. There are always going to be injuries, but he's got depth there. Rory Scannell was a guy who was carried along as the 25th man a couple of times as well. Didn't get his opportunity in this tour, but maybe in Australia. Fergus McFadden, another guy in the back three who had a big role to play in that France win in the last few minutes. He hit a few rucks, got a couple of carries as well. So that depth is really positive. If
we move on to the half backs, constant pairing throughout, world class pairing. A word on Conor Murray to start with. Best 9 in the world?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I do have to say I like Aaron Smith's play. His pass quality is exceptional, but Conor Murray, unbelievably important player. And if we look at his stats, he's such a physical presence. That's the thing he brings over other scrum halves. Like 31 tackles, which is almost the same as Johnny Sexton, his out half. It's actually exactly the same figure. And he's in the line all the time now in that 13+2 system. He's making big tackles. And he's making kicks 43, which is almost double the amount that Sexton made. He actually takes a lot of pressure.
I think that was the most in the tournament again. Kicks from hand, top 43. Kicker.
So he's a guy who's always in control of the tempo. He's always having a massive influence on the game. He scored 2 tries himself. Really brilliant finisher from close range, but also 4 passes for assists. So he's unbelievably influential over their whole kind of creative play as well. The stat I just wanted to pick out there was 542 passes positive and only 12 negative passes. And the consistency of his passing now is something I think is overlooked, because there are so rarely bad examples that you rarely notice it. One good example here that we wanted to look at was for the CJ Sander try just before Tadhg Furlong makes his unbelievable assist is Conor Murray here, and it's a beautiful pass to Johnny Sexton out in front of him, gets him moving forward, because if there's any slight check in that, the whole move kind of falls apart.
Sure.
And it's something that probably isn't picked up enough in Conor Murray's play. He works so hard to improve his consistency of passing. He works with Greg Oliver down in Munster a lot. And for me, he's pushing it. Aaron Smith, I think, is still the best passer. The range he has on it as well, but really impressive growth from Conor Murray. But so influential. Yeah.
Before we move on to Sexton, just the two penalties that Murray actually kind of overlooked.
Yeah.
The Welsh one moved Ireland 10 points clear. A tricky enough penalty attempt, and then obviously it's Twickenham on Saturday. That's just another string to his bow. And you talk about his kicking from hand there, but such a reliable place kicker. Yeah. If Sexton is off or.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I hadn't even thought that he like, it's his personality as well. Like, he seemed to, like that one against Wales, he seemed to be loving it.
Yeah, he just strikes him so cleanly as well, though. It's just such a laid back approach. Just really gets a good connection off it.
Yeah, I mean, he has most things in his kind of toolkit now. He has all the passing, all the kicking, place kicking now as well. So unbelievably world class player. Yeah.
Johnny Sexton, another world class player. How did you kind of rate his performance throughout the campaign? I think, a few missed kicks from the tee, which was unlike him, but again, his overall influence huge.
Yeah, like we don't have a stat for competitiveness either, but he's 100%. This guy is all in, so physical. Look at the amount of carries there, 43 carries. I'd say Joe Schmidt is watching that through his fingers at times. You saw against Wales, he was making pick and goes before tries. Like, this guy just wants it so much. A lot of tackles, he's always physical, he's looking for those choke tackles. And on top of that, he has all the creative ability. There's 6 passes for line breaks, 26 kicks, and you mentioned that Keith Earls one earlier on against France. That is a huge moment, as well as a drop kick, obviously. So for me, he's just an unbelievable rugby player. He's truly great, and also the fact that he's carrying injuries in a couple of games. His back or hamstring, we're not quite sure exactly what the issue was, but he was playing injured, and it didn't seem to affect him, bar a couple of those place kicks potentially. So for me, an unbelievable competitor, and one of the examples we just wanted to look at was in the lead up to Cian Healy's try against the Welsh. Ireland have lost a line out from 5 metres out, and Ross Moriarty has the ball here. He gets around CJ Sander just there, but who's waiting? Johnny Sexton, and he's not going to hold back. He absolutely hammers into that hit and drives Moriarty back over the line. Dan Levy does also help as well, but that sums up Sexton to me. Like, there aren't many other out halves who go seeking that hit. Maybe Owen Farrell, but he has been nowhere near as good as Johnny Sexton in this Six Nations campaign. So he has all the creative ability, big moments, but for me that's the most important thing as well. He leads by example with his physical game.
And a piece you had in the site, I think it was yesterday, you kind of described the forwards as ferocious, and that's probably the best word to kind of describe the overall performance. If we started with the front row and Cian Healy in particular, was actually surprised by we thought he had more carries in the game against England. He only ended up with 2, but just all around the pitch, so physical, no nonsense. And I think the highlight really that kind of encapsulates that was in that French game, where he kind of just seemed to pluck a couple of French forwards from the ruck and just swat them aside. Huge tournament again for him, because obviously himself and Jack McGrath have been in constant direct competition back and forth. And
Jack's played so well as well, coming off the bench.
So Cian Healy's kind of really stamped his authority in that position. Is that fair to say?
I totally agree. Like, one thing that stands out to me is his athletic makeup now. He's dropped a bit of weight. He's spoken about this. He's dropped a bit of weight, and I think that's helping him rack up some pretty impressive stats as well. His power is still there, but he's a little bit light around the pitch, and he's making 25 tackles across the course of the game, remembering that he's coming off late in games and even missed one, and no tackle misses. 44 carries. He was really powerful in contact, and he contributed to scrum success of 98.4% for Ireland. Like, that's a massive platform for them. Joe Schmidt places such a big emphasis on it, and Greg Feek, the scrum coach, can definitely take a bit of pride in that. But Healy, for me, played a big part in that. Even if you look at the second Jacob Stockdale try, where they used that intricate 3-phase power play, he holds the scrum unbelievably well there. It was easy for him to go down under massive pressure. But the minutes as well, like he racked up 239. That's a talent
stat, isn't it? Most since 2014.
He's fit, and that makes such a difference. Cian Healy was always one of the best loose heads around. It was just the fact that he was so unlucky with injuries, and now kind of like Keith Earls, he's less worried about having that weight on him, and he's getting way better athletic gain. So also that's a bit of credit to RFU and how they've managed their athletes as well. So it's good to see him back in great nick. And one of the examples I wanted to pick out, kind of like the Cian Healy of old, he was always a good carrier, and in this example he's going to just blast over the try line with a good latch from Peter O'Mahony there as well. But it's great to see him getting those moments, and I think he looks happy and healthy as well. So there's a lot more left in him. But Jack McGrath there as well, always pushing him.
He's not a bad player to come off the bench.
He's not
vice versa.
Yeah, he could easily start for any other, many other nations. So they've got really good depth there.
Sure. Rory Best, captain, another player who signed a new contract with the RFU this morning up until the 2019 World Cup. Huge boost. What did you kind of make of his overall contributions? We saw on Saturday, great communicator with Angus Gardner, just constantly in his ear, but not overdoing it. You know, we saw Dylan Hartley was kind of a bit more aggressive. Maybe that's just his style, but Rory Best very laid back and just very composed and calm in his communication.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing we wanted to pick out. Like, we don't have many examples of unbelievable moments from Rory Best on the pitch, but it's that communication. Here's Gardner and Paper having a little laugh with him. You know, he got on their good side, whereas Hartley, as you say, was a little bit more aggressive, was almost a bit more desperate.
Yeah.
And at the key moments, like, you know, when Bundyaki goes in and doesn't really rap, I think Hartley really should have been in Gardner's ear there. You know, that has to be yellow, that has to be yellow. And obviously you don't want to encourage that kind of play, but I think Best managed him much better. He got a great relationship with him going. And it was key for me, if we look at his stats, like, around the pitch, I'm not sure how much he's offering in terms of the carry, the tackle. You know, he missed Aaron Shingler for one of the Welsh tries. He's not as explosive as he once was, but huge work rate in terms of the ruck numbers. We don't have them here, but he's always up high in those charts. And on top of that, he captained all 5 games. He was there to start all 5 of them. No Jamie Heaslip, you know, they probably missed him in the first quarter of those early games, but Best led really well, and he deservedly gets a new contract.
Yeah, you mentioned how great it was to kind of see Keith Earls enjoy the moment with his family at Twickenham on Saturday, but someone like Sean Cronin, who spoke quite well about missing out in November and trying to get back in, for him to be so explosive, we know what he can do off the bench, but to do it time and time again, and just adds a great option for Joe Schmidt off the bench. You know, coming on, he brings real energy, and we saw him get a try or two during the course of the championship as well. So another great option, like McGrath coming on for Healy, and we'll speak about Porter coming on for Furlong and vice versa. But Cronin for Best is another strong option.
He must get frustrated because he offers so much around the pitch, more so than Rory Best does, but maybe doesn't have the same leadership or status in the group. But what an impact player to have, and he's going to be important going forward, definitely. Sure.
Moving on to, I suppose, the tight head. You mentioned Tyg Furlong there, another huge tournament by him. Again, his stock just continues to soar. Man of the match at Twickenham on Saturday. You could see how much it meant to him after the game with his family there as well. What did you kind of make of his overall performance? Because he just seems to be getting better and better and better.
Yeah, I think like he's setting new standards for tight head play in world rugby, and he has been for the last while. His stats are in terms of his power output and his work rate: 30 made tackles, none missed, 33 carries, and he's so explosive. You saw against Scotland especially, he kind of went on the rampage, kind of like that time against New Zealand in Lansdowne Road in 2016. But also 12 passes, and also it's important to point out he only played 201 minutes. He missed 2 games.
Sure. But
the passing is what really separates him, and the obvious example is against the French. That was just a moment of pure beauty. There he's in the middle of it, and it was so fluid. You know, in that moment it actually looks like it might go to Johnny Sexton, and you can see why England bought it so well. Also because he's such a threat. Like, you know, he's still on for that carry, potentially like smashing into Dylan Hartley and through the line. But he did it so fluidly, like, even without a ball, it's actually hard to do that without falling over. Yeah. He's moving at such pace, and he pulls it off so well. So incredibly impressive. I don't know if there's.
We were just saying before on air that just shows you how good his skills are, that Joe would have a tight head prop at the heart of a move like that, and he pulled it off, as you say, superbly, and that kind of acted as the decoy nearly, because we're probably expecting, when you see Tyg Furlong in midfield off the set piece like that, thinking that, as you say, just truck it up the middle. But yeah, superb. Andrew Porter again, he got probably more minutes than he was expecting with Tyg Furlong's injury against Italy, and in the Welsh game he stepped up again superbly, and another one of these players that just adds huge depth. I suppose his development was fast tracked, but certainly justified in that sense.
Yeah, like, what a prospect. He's 22 and he's already standing out physically. There was 1-0 moment in the 80th minute in Twickenham where, again, the game's won. There's a 2-1 on the outside edge, and he's caught on the outside edge. Jamie George and another guy outside him, and somehow he pulls off this incredible tackle that's literally about his sheer strength. He reaches over the top of George and rips in underneath his right shoulder and tackles him like literally inches short. So he's made a huge impact, and for him to play most of that Italy game and also start against Wales, everyone would have been nervous about that. Was it a risk? But he's shown that he's well able for Test rugby, and he also has a bit of mobility, a bit of skill as well. So really exciting prospect.
John Ryan obviously came off the bench in Paris, and he's kind of fallen down the pecking order slightly now. But again, a third option, really strong and really valuable member to have in a squad.
Yeah, like he's unlucky with that penalty against the French. But before that, there were 2 really strong scrums from him, and he's been in there. He's been his 24th man the whole way through, and very close to it. Yeah, he's probably suffered because Porter has emerged so strongly, but he's definitely going to be in the mix again. And there's a couple of other props there as well. Dave Kilcoyne was unlucky with his badly timed injury as well, and there's a couple of younger guys coming through as well. So yeah, a lot of depth there as well.
Second row, there was a bit of changing, primarily down to a few injuries. James Ryan, Henderson picked up a few knocks throughout the course, but really strong options again. Henderson, big boost, signing a contract again today. What did you kind of make? I suppose we start with James Ryan, because first Six Nations, he hasn't lost a professional game in his career. Again, so impressive, his stats, his carries, so physical. The thunderous hit, I suppose, on a Toje from kick-off on Saturday kind of set the tone and just sums what he's about, really. Yeah,
like he's just so explosive for his age. It's incredible that a 21-year-old lock is starting Test rugby and already standing out in that regard. I don't know if people understand how difficult that is to do. And his work rate is absolutely through the roof. 44 tackles, 51 carries, and a lot of that is kind of crappy carries around the fringes that no one wants to do, but he's always there, putting his head down, surging into contact, winning lineouts, stealing lineouts, and also ruck work. We want to just highlight one example against Scotland. He's a vicious ruck hitter, and that's massive for any second row. Ryan Wilson there is over the ball he's initially in a really good jackal position, but Ryan absolutely hammers in here. It's worth watching this back if people have the game on YouTube or whatever. He absolutely smashes him in the upper back. There's so much venom in it. It's a one kind of opportunity. I have to get him first time, and he blasts Wilson away. So he's brought that as well. He's brought that aggression, and he's brought a really important kind of solidity in his mindset as well. He's not awed by it. He's not thinking, oh, it's great, I'm here in the Six Nations. He's wanting to win a Grand Slam already. And as you say, he hasn't tasted defeat in professional rugby, which is just remarkable. Yeah,
Schmidt started the tournament and ended the tournament with that Henderson-Ryan combination in the second row. And we know that's kind of earmarked as the future one for Ireland. But Devon Toner continues to stand up time and time again, justifies the selection each time. What did you kind of make of his performance? Because it's difficult, because he's looking over his shoulder at guys like James Ryan, Ultan Dillane coming up, and with Tyke Byrne coming back to Munster for next season. There's a lot of competition there, probably more so than ever really before for him. So it's an important time for him to stand up and perform. How do you think he went?
Look, that's a great point. He always does stand up and perform. His consistency is just incredible. He's never going to make a big massive line break for you, although having said that, I think his carrying has improved drastically. He's getting a lot of pace into the carry. He's using his size. I think he has actually dropped a little bit of weight as well, so it's interesting to see the guys who are benefiting from getting their athletic kind of capabilities right. But he's been really impressive again. He's so solid, great in the line out, calling the line out, hits a lot of rucks as well, big work rate as well. So yeah, there's 3 really good contenders there for the locking positions. Those 2 guys who are younger obviously are the future. Quinn Rue also came on and had a really important involvement in a big scrum penalty. You mentioned Murray slotting that. Rue comes on a tight head lock, and he drives really hard there as well. We should also mention that about Ryan as well, 21, and he's tight head scrummaging, which is a really tough job, and then he's also bringing the work rate on top of that. So yeah, again, it looks really bright. We keep saying it, but there's a lot of depth in a lot of positions.
Just quickly before we move on, Henderson, and people kind of may overlook this or may not realise it, but Joe spoke about it before England as well, that he's now calling the lineouts, and it's obviously a big role. And actually, Dave Nusafora, the IRFU performance director, highlighted in the press release that they released today when they signed his contract that's obviously now a big part of his role. Can you kind of explain the kind of nuances of that and how important it is, especially when you're playing alongside someone like James Ryan, who is still very inexperienced?
That's an interesting point. I actually hadn't seen that quote, but it's an incredibly important job, and probably the line out is something that all of us, apart from the forwards who are watching, don't appreciate enough. Like, so much work goes into it. If you're a line out caller, you have to do an unbelievable amount of analysis on your own lineouts, have all those calls literally ready to go in your head, plus different trigger calls depending on how the opposition lines up. So if there's a guy marked up on your main option, you got to change that in the lineout or on the way to the lineout. You got to think about how they set up themselves, so reading their plays, reading their body language, how a guy moves forward, back, what his lifters are doing. There's an unbelievable amount that goes into it, and if you're not getting clean line-out possession for your own team, obviously your attack is going to suffer massively. If you don't get a good launch on your first phase, then they can get their defensive line set and everything else is going to suffer. On the opposite side, if you can get good competition and make good reads, which Henderson has done in this championship, getting line-out steals, it spoils their possession and suddenly their attack is going to suffer a lot. And I think we saw that at maul and line-out time. And actually, if we look at an example from Henderson, I think that shot is brilliant. He's calling for the ref, he's calling for that turnover, but it's just unbelievable amount of strength, and he's manhandling Maro Itoje, who's trying to get his knee down to the ground, and I thought Ryan and Henderson actually bullied those Lions locks they started against. So yeah, it's impressive, and what's to come still is really important. But as you say, Henderson is growing into that kind of maturity role. Speaking
of line-out steals, Peter O'Mahony, really the master at it. The back row for Ireland had an exceptional tournament, really. If we look at the CJ Standard, the way Dan Levy stepped up, and you consider Sean O'Brien, Rhys Ruddock, Josh Van der Fleer all kind of out missing. Huge options again, but I suppose if we start with Peter O'Mahony, some of the stats here are incredible. Just gets through so much work, a colossal leader really in the pack. Such a nuisance at the breakdown. Yeah, he is. For me, like I wrote this during the championship, he's almost become like the new Jamie Heaslip. He doesn't make big line breaks, he doesn't make smashing tackles. He's probably not the biggest guy in world rugby, but he kind of glues everything together. He's a clever presence. He's first to the breakdown so many times. 26 passes as well, that little link play. He had 17 line-out wins on Ireland's throw, which was the most for any player, so he's their frontline option. He didn't get any steals, actually, interesting enough, but there was so much competition. Like, he gets up every time and makes it scrappy. 40 carries, made all of his tackle attempts as well, so really consistent performer, and also off the pitch he's a leader as well. So yeah, I think he's maybe getting slightly underappreciated again, but for me he is kind of like that role that Jamie Heaslip grew into, even though he initially broke through as a more dynamic player. Really important. Yeah, the other side of the scrum, Dan Levy was a constant throughout. He spoke before the tournament about realising, when Josh Van der Fleer was sidelined, realising that this is a huge opportunity for him, and he just grasped it with both hands. No surprise there, really, knowing the type of character and rugby player he is. Just huge performances throughout, workhorse, and you kind of wonder how Sean O'Brien or Josh Van der Fleer will get back into that Ireland team going forward, because he really stamped his authority on that position. Yeah, and like the kind of physical impact he made almost surprised me. Like, he's a really strong guy, but he was getting through a lot of like one-on-one tackles, making ground when he probably shouldn't have. Really powerful tackles. Even his numbers, just his work rate was off the charts. 51 made tackles, only missed 3. 58 carries, and some of them were really powerful as well. And one of the stats we wanted to pick up as well was he only conceded 1 penalty. Like, it's really good discipline for an open side flanker. You're in that position so many times where you can give away penalties. You're being a nuisance, and he was constantly a nuisance. But he also had the intelligence to kind of maybe take his hands off when he was jackling, when it was kind of pointed out to him by the ref. And I think that for me is really impressive thing about him. He's, again, like Ryan, he's never in awe of the occasion. He thinks he belongs in that. He knows in his mind that he belongs in that kind of arena. And one of the examples we want to look at from his play was just this kind of the fight to stay in the jackal. He's here over the ball. Initially he does have his hand on the ground, I have to say, in this example, but he gets back onto the ball. Alan Wynne-Jones comes in with one of those clean outs that are actually similar to James Ryan just before. He smashes him in the upper back kind of neck area, and a lot of guys let go of the ball there, but Levy stays in the fight and gets the breakdown turnover penalty. And there was a great shot of Alan Wynne-Jones afterwards looking at the ref like, what the hell just happened there? I thought I cleared him away. So yeah, he's been really impressive coming into that environment, and as you say, there's a lot of competition there now, but it's his jersey at the moment. Sean O'Brien, it would have been interesting to see how Ireland would have gone in this championship with him there as well, but I think Levy kind of owns that jersey now. CJ Stander had a huge, we'll look at his stats now, but a huge tournament, like 24 carries against England, 21 against Wales, 24 against France, topping the charts in nearly every game in that regard. We spoke earlier about just how much work he gets through, just so physical. How did you assess his overall performance? Yeah, like the sheer number of carries he gets through is just incredible. This is the second highest total for a player in the Six Nations ever, and last year he set the record with 107, I think it was. So he's a big target for the opposition defence, and he's only eking out 2.1 metres, but for me that's actually impressive considering the amount of traffic he carries into. Compared to a lot of the Irish guys on Saturday against England, that's quite a significant carry, because I think a lot of them weren't according to the stats anyway, weren't making a lot of ground.
I mean, it was a tough game, it was a tough battle. The defences were really strong in those
Yeah.
narrowing areas, but he invariably made those. And also he's getting those tackles, you know, just 21 passes as well. So he's getting a little bit of variety into his game, but the carrying is the big thing. Like, one of the carries that stands out most of all to me, there's 96 of them, so it's kind of hard to pick out one or two of them. But against France, in that passage of play for 5 minutes when they're building up to the drop goal, he carries into contact here, but then the key is he kind of rolls out of that tackle and he just gets that extra couple of metres, gets the French defence back another couple of steps, and then bang, they strike for the drop goal off that as well. So I thought it was fitting that he was the kind of last carry in that passage.
Yeah. Jack Conan also featured. You know, it's a frustrating one for him because he's kind of seen off is probably the wrong word with Jamie Heaslip, but he got game time at Leinster when Jamie was out, obviously, and you know, trying to work his way into the fold. And CJ Stander is now arguably back to his real best form after maybe a slight dip at the end of last season. So it's really hard for Jack Conan to get a look in. How do you think he went when he did get his chance?
Yeah, I think he'll be frustrated with how he did in that Welsh match. There was, you know, one moment can be a big moment in Test rugby especially, and he just kind of shot up on that Steph Evans try. He kind of gets out of the line, bites in a little bit, and they get exposed on the outside edge. Now there are always other people involved, and it is a system kind of failing when you concede a try. It's never just on one guy, but I think that would have been, you know, gnawing away at him a bit. But against Italy we saw the best of him, you know. He was so unlucky to get injured at half time, to come off at half time, because we saw his lovely hands to Conor Murray when he put him away for that try, when they all kind of linked down the left hand side, and he has that. He's kind of rangy, he's got an offload, he's very mobile across the ground and good footwork as well. So certainly not finished with Ireland by any means, and he'll hope that this tour to Australia means a chance. Yeah.
Before we look at a couple of your questions, Jordy Murphy, a word for him, because after the injury he had and the year he had of getting back, you know, he admitted himself that a few doors opened for him in this championship with the likes of Van der Fleer and Sean O'Brien out. But when he got his chance, he really seized it. He came on against Scotland, and again at Twickenham on Saturday, and just brought huge energy, a couple of huge carries, and a couple of players after in the mix zone pointed that out, and it didn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, good character around the squad as well, judging by the Instagrams from the last few days as well. So that's important. No wonder he's popular. But he did make such an impact, and I think it's really exciting for Ulster rugby fans as well, because he's going up there next year. The province is in the doldrums, and they need a bit of a leader and a guy who's going to get them onto the front foot. They've missed that carry, and maybe Jordy Murphy wasn't always known for that when he comes into professional rugby. More of a kind of clever player around the breakdown and stuff like that as well. But now he's a really complete presence, and even again, like, we can't forget the big games he's played. He started against the All Blacks, obviously got injured that time in 2016, but he started against England at number 8 once in that win. So he's been there, and Joe Schmidt constantly rates him. So he's an excellent player, and it's brilliant for Ulster that they're getting him next year. Yeah,
just a question from Kieran Campbell, and we mentioned Tyke Byrne when we were going through the second rows. He wants to know, where do you think Tyke Byrne will fit in? Obviously he's coming back to Munster during the summer. You've Toner, Ryan, Henderson, Quinrue, Delan all involved in this Six Nations. Yeah. Presumably there's a space for him in there, but where is that space? Australia tour in June, on the basis that he will be involved, will be a big one, because he'll get in and around that environment. He has been in an environment before. I think Joe asked him to come in a couple of times to that Carton House camp, but where do you think he'll fit in, and how do you see that going, I suppose?
For me, he's definitely a second row. He's played a lot in the back row for the Scarlets this season. He's actually played more in the back row than the second row, which is one of the things Joe Schmidt highlighted when he said he didn't bring him in the squad. But I think his second row is his best position. He has that jackling ability, like, he's a freakish turnover machine. But on top of that, he's got good line-out skills. Even though he's not the biggest in terms of stature and weight, he packs a lot of punch as well. But he's got a battle on his hands, definitely. I think Joe Schmidt will bring him in Australia. I think he'll cap him, get him up to speed as well, because it just adds another element to that competition and pushes those frontline guys as well. But absolutely, Tyke Byrne's got a battle on his hands, comes back to Munster, needs to establish himself there more so even first of all, but it is exciting to get him back. I think
there is a big few weeks ahead for the provinces. Pro 14 returns this weekend, then it's Champions Cup quarterfinals and Challenge Cup quarterfinal for Connacht. But looking ahead to that next Irish involvement, and that's the summer tour of Australia, Joe again constantly repeatedly talked about how important that summer tour last year of USA and Japan. You capped the likes of James Ryan, Stockdale, Porter, those type of guys that really got experience working with Joe in that environment. So do you see it being again hugely important? Obviously no Lions tour this year, so there's going to be a lot more senior players involved, but again a real stepping stone towards that World Cup.
Yeah, like going over there and getting a Test series win on top of what they've just done would be massive, as you say, a big step. But I think it's important that they get like clearly defined goals for this tour and especially around the half-back positions. We've just spoken about how good Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton are. It's beyond doubt. But the guys behind them haven't really had as much opportunity. I thought Joey Carberry did do well when he came on, especially in Twickenham. 2 stints on the pitch, looked really composed. But I'd love to see him start a big test match at 10 for Ireland, and just control the whole thing. Same at scrum half. Like Luke McGrath was very unlucky. He got injured after sitting on the bench for the 80 minutes in France, so he didn't get a chance. But Marmion came on again on the wing the last day. He must be getting so sick of that at this stage. But I think seeing a new halfback pairing starting one of those tests even would be really positive.
Yeah. I suppose just on Carby, we forgot to mention him when we were talking about the halfbacks, but his place kicking really seems to have come on. That time on the sideline has really allowed him to work, and I know he was working quite closely with Richie Murphy for a good bit of that time on the sideline. And a couple he came on during the Six Nations, a couple of really sweet strikes. We saw again on Twickenham, as you said, on Saturday. He just looks really composed in that position. Another one of these young players that just exudes confidence.
Yeah, like I guess the challenge for him now is to go back to Leinster and get starts at 10 or get game time there, which he hasn't really, on account of Ross Byrne doing so well in that position. And obviously Johnny Sexton goes back now and starts against Saracens. So that's a challenge for him. He's obviously he's going to stay at Leinster, that's where he wants to play his rugby, but I think it's important for Ireland that he gets more game time at 10.
Yeah. Overall, really positive space Ireland are in.
Yeah, like I think just if we look at them collectively and what Joe Schmidt has done with the team, 20 tries in this championship, their highest ever in a Six Nations campaign. They did concede 11, but I think it's important to point out that the defence had really strong passages as well. Even in Twickenham, you think of those 6.5 minutes after half time where they were so strong early on in the game. They really limited the English opportunities, and even when they went down to 14 men, they made England work unbelievably hard for that. It was really telling that the players all kind of spoke about Andy Farrell after the game. Really popular in the squad, and he's done a good job. And I think some of the stats kind of sum it up. A guy called Simon Gleave, who's on Twitter, if people don't follow him, he's absolutely excellent. He's the head of analysis in Grace No Sports, and he looks at the 22 entries, and Ireland were unbelievably clinical here. You know, they entered the opposition 22 38 times, which was the second most of anyone, and they had 3.82 points per 22 visit, which was the best of any team. So that sums up just how clinical they are when they get into those good positions. Also, they actually limited the opposition to the fewest kind of 22 entries. It was 25 was the total, which was the best in the competition as well. So they're controlling games, they've got a lot of possession, they're really good at retaining the ball. Everyone understands their kind of role in it, as they say, and he's got them in a great place with that depth. So it's hard not to be very positive. They've got a really good coaching team around them. The
most encouraging thing, I suppose, before we finish up, is that there is huge room still for improvement.
Yeah, there is. There absolutely is. Like, we're talking about how good these players have been, but that's because of the competition behind them. That's because they know that no one's guaranteed a place anymore. The big goal since 2015 World Cup has been depth. That's happening now. There's probably still more to come, and I think Ireland should be looking towards that World Cup in a very ambitious way, because now with the depth of squad, with the key leaders they have, they can certainly look beyond a quarter final anyway. Hopefully that's to come for Irish rugby, but I think there's enough quality there that they can be real challengers. Yeah, that's obviously further down the line. Big couple of weeks, as we said, for the provinces, players going back. Final word, Keith Earls, one of the questions came in, do we know how serious that injury is going to be? I think Johan van Graan kind of suggested yesterday that was medial ligament damage, so not looking too good for him. There's been a few bumps and bruises over the course with Robbie Henshaw, obviously, with Leinster obviously is a big blow as well. They do a bit more depth, but really unfortunate for Keith Earls. He's been so impressive, and Munster probably a tricky position now. They lost Clute as well, and Chris Farrell obviously as well from the Six Nations. So let's get back into the provinces, and hopefully they can continue the momentum that Ireland have built up. Six Nations is finished. Ireland Grand Slam winners, but as we said, huge couple of weeks to come in Irish rugby for the provinces. That's all for us. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.